Colleen Campbell. We are going to give you the latest that we have here to break down the tropics. I know a lot of you have had questions and we appreciate you reaching out, and we're here to answer them on our social platforms. All right, so starting off, we have Potential Tropical Cyclone Four. That was formed earlier today. It's currently located on the eastern edge of Cuba at this time. And a lot of you, let's start off with this question. What is a potential tropical cyclone? Well, it's a term that we use to describe a disturbance that's not yet a tropical disturbance where it's going to form into a tropical storm, not quite yet, but it does bring that threat of hurricane conditions to land or tropical storm conditions to land within 48 hours. So it's basically a little prep to before we get a named system. So that leads us into a name or number. Well, like a tropical depression, a PTC is numbered. We're at number 4 right now, but if it were to strengthen, again, this is kind of the pre-stages before we're expecting it to strengthen, then it would become a named storm once it reaches tropical storm status. So it has to have winds at least 39 miles per hour for that to occur. All right, getting into the watches and warnings and the cone. So here's Potential Tropical Cyclone 4, excuse me, and we have these watches and warnings that are lighting up your screen. So let's start off with cone. Here we are. It's going to move over Hispaniola, and then by tomorrow, we will likely see it strengthen to a tropical depression. And at that time, it's not going to be a named system quite yet, but by tomorrow evening we could see Tropical Storm Debby. So going a little bit further here in our track on the cone, and remember the impacts can be felt outside the cone. You don't want to just focus on the cone alone because that can certainly change. We've seen that with previous storms in the past, right? But here's an important part. By tomorrow evening we could see that little icon down there. That's indicating that we could have a tropical storm by that point. So 39-mile-per-hour winds or greater, and then we're looking at the impacts of this for wind and rain as we move into our forecast here. So that's why you see these yellow boxes that are highlighting. We're going to go over that in just a second, but tropical storm watch, tropical storm warning, we have some areas that are highlighted in that color. And then eventually the system is going to move across the East Coast, around the Carolinas, and eventually way out of our hair towards Virginia there. All right, getting into the spaghetti models now. There have been some changes with this as well. We have seen this trending closer to the east, more inland, and that's something that we do like to see. I know looking at that, you're probably saying, oh boy, we have this coming over land. But you can't be nervous about that because here's the thing. The more that's over land, the more that it works out in our favor. Why? Well, we don't want it going off on this track that's more off to the west, because the more time that it has developing in that warm bath type water in the Gulf, well, that's what these tropical systems love, and that's when it will start to strengthen and intensify more. So those spaghetti models that are veering off to the west a little bit more, that's not something that we necessarily want to see. I know it seems like, oh, we're having this over land, that's scary, but overland actually works out in our favor. Yes, we will have the rain. Yes, we will have the winds, but if we could get this storm not to get to hurricane status, that would be fantastic. And right now it is looking like it will peak at that tropical storm status with the latest model runs. So again, here we go. We're going on this model. This is our in-house model that you're looking at this time. Pay attention to that circle. That's that area of low pressure that we do want to keep our eye on. So here we go into tomorrow. Now we're leading into Sunday. Quick little jump there. This is early Sunday morning at 4 a.m. Pay attention to the time. It's in the corner of your screen there. Just off the coast here. We're looking at Fort Myers, and then eventually it will move closer to Tampa Bay as we enter into late Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and then again, it is going to start to veer off towards the Carolinas and eventually way up to the north where we are far out from that. But forecasted rainfall, so again, the main threat being the rainfall with this, which could lead to some flooding as well as some wind impacts. So the forecasted rainfall, this is the GFS, so this is just one of the models that we're looking at here. And you see all this red where we could have anywhere to 4 to 8 inches in some spots, especially for our inland locations, but this is all going to be determined by where it eventually makes landfall. And until we get that circulation really to develop, it's hard to say. Yes, we can look off the spaghetti models, and yes, a lot of the models are pointing to it making landfall closer to our coast early on in the game. That would be great because, again, the impacts will be felt differently across different parts of our region. This is very early forecasting. But what we do know is, again, you can expect, look at this. This is a different model. This is the Euro. You see less of those brighter colors for our inland locations, and it's a little bit closer to the coast. Why is that? Again, because the models have not been agreeing on exactly where this thing wants to make landfall. And that all depends on when we get those outer rain bands, where we feel the wind effects, where we feel the rain effects. And we are, unfortunately, still a couple hours out from that. But the more that you pay attention to the forecast, the better, because we want you to be prepared, and we're giving you the latest information as we receive it. All right, this is the wind impact. When will we start seeing those tropical or feeling those tropical force winds? As we move into, again, late tomorrow night is when we're expecting it to get to that tropical storm status. It could happen a little bit before that. By tomorrow morning, it will be a tropical depression. Again, not a named system at that time. But as we move into Saturday evening, Saturday late nights, that's when it could be a tropical storm, and it will be a little bit closer to our coast, and we could start feeling those impacts of the wind. So again, I'm going to step off screen here. You can see that Sunday at 8 a.m., those areas highlighted in the bright yellow color, very close to the coast, where we're going to see those impacts, the larger impacts for our region. But again, this can change. All right, moving into our watches and warnings. So this is pretty important because this applies to a lot of folks, right? So we have that tropical storm watch that basically goes from Bonita Beach all the way up through Tampa Bay. That's that area highlighted in that yellow color. And then the blue color is that tropical storm warning that goes from Bonita Beach down to the Everglades for all my friends in Southwest Florida. So here it is, the storm surge. We've been talking about that as well. Again, it all depends on where this thing wants to make landfall, but generally we are expecting 1 to 3 feet of storm surge. Here's another element that's adding to this. Don't forget, we have a new moon that's coming on Sunday, so that kind of increases our probability of seeing that higher tide than normal. Very important to pay attention to the tide times as we get closer to this thing making landfall, because the tide times also play an important role. So we have the new moon, tide times, pay attention to that, and then of course where the winds go, so we can determine where this thing will, it will determine the winds and the rain. All right, going into our tropical names here. Again, not a name system yet, but if it does get a name, the next name on the list would be Debby, Debby with Y. So we will update that as well once we get that name. All right, what we're tracking, we're gonna recap everything here. The main impacts Saturday night into Sunday. Rain, flash flood threats for the peninsula. Again, we went over those rainfall totals, but the specifics on exactly where, that's still to be determined within the next excuse me, couple of hours. And then the wind impacts 55 to 65 mile per hour winds. Of course, across the coast would be the highest, and that plays into that storm surge as well. If we have winds that are kind of veering off the coast, again, depending on that landfall, well then some areas won't have as much of a wind threat, excuse me with my voice. All right, this is forecasted to be Tropical Storm Debby. We could have that form into a tropical storm as we enter into tomorrow evening, tomorrow night, and there is still some uncertainty with the strength and the track. Of course, the closest that we get, or the closer that we get to this thing moving over Hispaniola, that's when we will start to get the gears rolling into motion. But for now, we want to make sure you are paying attention to the latest updates. That's all we have for your hurricane headquarters here.